relationship with the delicacy of people handling something precious and potentially explosive. We established rules, spoken and unspoken, designed to protect what we were building. "I need boundaries," I told him one evening after Luca had gone to bed. We sat in his study, the space that had become our haven for difficult conversations. "Clear lines I won't cross. Tell me what you need. I don't want involvement in your business. Not the illegal parts, not the dangerous parts. I don't want to know details, don't want to witness anything that would make me complicit." I met his gaze directly. "And if you ever cross a line I can't accept, if you hurt innocent people or do something that violates my core values, I reserve the right to leave. No matter how I feel about you." Anthony nodded slowly. "Those are fair terms. I can keep that world separate from you." "Can you? Really?" I pressed. "Because eventually, something will bleed through. That's the nature of what you do. Then I'll handle it when it happens. But I won't let you be exposed to violence or criminality. You have my word." For 6 weeks, he kept that promise. Life settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mornings with Luca before school. Afternoons exploring museums or parks or simply reading in the garden. Evenings with Anthony joining us for dinner. The three of us talking and laughing like families do. Nights where Anthony and I would steal moments alone. Kisses in darkened hallways. Conversations that stretched into early morning hours. But normal was an illusion in Anthony Ferraro's world, and illusions always shatter eventually. The first crack appeared when I noticed Anthony's tension increasing. Phone calls at odd hours, meetings that kept him away longer, security that became more visible rather than discreet. He tried to hide it, but I'd learned to read the tightness around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched when problems pressed. "What's wrong?" I asked one night, finding him in his study long after midnight, staring at documents spread across his desk. "Business complications. Nothing for you to worry about. Anthony, I'm handling it, Kayla." His tone was sharper than usual, stress bleeding through his control. Then he softened, reaching for my hand. "I'm sorry. You're right to ask. There's territorial conflict escalating, rival interests pushing into areas that have been stable for years. It's manageable, but it requires attention. Dangerous attention? All attention in my world carries risk, but I've dealt with worse. I wanted to press, to demand more information, but our agreement echoed in my mind. Don't ask about the business. Don't cross that line." So I squeezed his hand and let it go, trusting him to keep his violent world separate from the life we were building. That trust proved misplaced. 3 days later, I arrived at the house to find Anthony in his study with 4 men I'd never seen before. The door was partially open, their voices carrying into the hallway, where I stood frozen with Luca beside me. "The O'Sullivans hit 3 of our dock operations last night," one man said, his tone grim. "They're not negotiating, Anthony. They want war. Then we give them war." Anthony's voice was cold, devoid of the warmth I'd come to associate with him. "Hit them back twice as hard. Their warehouse on the waterfront, their distribution center in Queens. I want them to understand that every action has consequences." "What about civilians? The warehouse has legitimate workers during day shifts. Schedule it for night. I'm not interested in unnecessary casualties, but I'm also not interested in showing weakness. The O'Sullivans need to remember why they avoided conflict with us for the past decade." I felt Luca stiffen beside me, his small hand gripping mine with painful intensity. When I looked down, his face had gone white, eyes wide with the kind of terror I'd only seen once before in a rain-soaked alley. "Luca," I whispered, but he pulled away from me, backing toward the stairs. "I need to go to my room," he said, voice shaking. I can't." He ran before I could stop him, footsteps pounding up the staircase. I stood torn between following him and confronting Anthony, before choosing the child who needed me more. I found Luca curled on his bed, shaking violently. When I sat beside him, he flinched away. "It's happening again," he whispered. "The violence. Papa is planning to hurt people, and someone will get hurt back, and..." His breathing came too fast, panic attack threatening. "Mama died because of his business. The man who hit our car, he was trying to hurt Papa, but got her instead. And now it's starting again, and you'll die too, and I can't..." Luca, breathe with me. I kept my voice steady despite my own racing heart. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Come on. Do it with me. We breathed together until his panic subsided to manageable fear. Then I held him while he cried, processing revelations I hadn't known. Gianna's death hadn't been random accident. It had been collateral damage in Anthony's war. When Anthony found us an hour later, Luca was asleep, exhausted from emotion. I extracted myself carefully and followed Anthony into the hallway, closing the bedroom door behind me. He heard, Anthony said flatly. Not a question. He heard you planning violence. He's terrified it's going to happen again, that someone else he loves will die because of your business. Anthony's face showed the first real crack in his composure I'd witnessed. I never wanted him to know that part of my life. I've tried so hard to keep him separate. You can't keep it separate when you're planning retaliatory strikes in your home office with the door open. Anger edged into my voice. You promised me boundaries, Anthony. You promised this world wouldn't touch us. And I've kept that promise. You weren't supposed to overhear that conversation. Luca wasn't supposed to. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. The O'Sullivans are forcing my hand. If I don't respond, they'll see weakness and escalate. More people will die if I show restraint now. So you're choosing violence as the solution. I'm choosing survival, protection. Everything I do is to keep my family safe. Your family, I repeated. The same family that just listened to you plan attacks that could kill people? The same son who's now terrified you're going to die like his mother did? The next morning, everything fell apart. I arrived at the house at my usual time to find it in chaos. Anthony was shouting orders into his phone, men I recognized as his security team moving with urgent purpose through the rooms. What's happening? I grabbed Anthony's arm as he passed. Luca's missing. He didn't arrive at school this morning. The security team thought there was a driver change, but his voice cracked. Someone has him, Kayla. The O'Sullivans have my son. Ice flooded my veins. Are you sure? Did they make demands? Not yet, but it's the only explanation. He left with someone claiming to be a new driver, got in a car that wasn't ours, and vanished. Anthony looked destroyed, fear replacing his usual control. I should have increased security. Should have seen this coming. Should have... Anthony, stop! My mind raced, processing. You said he got in a car willingly? Told security there was a driver change? Yes. Why does that? Because Luca is 8 years old and terrified. What if he wasn't taken? What if he ran? Anthony stared at me. Ran where? He's a child. A child who overheard you planning violence yesterday. A child who's convinced that violence killed his mother and will kill everyone else he loves. I grabbed my phone. He wouldn't go home. He wouldn't go anywhere obvious. He'd go somewhere he feels safe. Somewhere connected to good memories rather than fear. Where? I closed my eyes, thinking through all our afternoons together, all the places that had made Luca light up. The public library, the main branch where we used to spend hours in the children's section. He loved it there, said it felt peaceful. That's 15 minutes from his school. You think he'd go there alone? I think he's your son, which means he's smart and resourceful when he's scared. And I think he deliberately fooled your security because he needed to escape. Anthony was already moving, shouting orders to mobilize teams to the library. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. I know him, Anthony. Trust me. The drive felt eternal despite taking less than 20 minutes. Anthony sat rigid beside me, making call after call, coordinating his people. When we arrived, he wanted to storm in with his entire security team, but I stopped him. Let me go first. If he's there, he's scared and hiding. A dozen armed men will terrify him more. Kayla, trust me, I repeated. The library was busy with afternoon patrons, oblivious to the drama unfolding. I moved through the main floor to the children's section in the back, scanning between shelves and reading nooks. At first, I saw nothing. Then I noticed a small shoe visible beneath a table in the furthest corner, behind a display of picture books. Luca, I kept my voice soft, non-threatening. It's me. It's Kayla. A muffled sound, something between a sob and a gasp. I crouched down, peering under the table. Luca was there, knees pulled to his chest, face buried against his arms. He looked up at my voice, and the relief that flooded his features broke my heart. "I ran away," he whispered. "I tricked Marco. I told him Papa changed drivers and I got in a taxi and came here. I know I'm in trouble, but I couldn't. You're not in trouble. You're safe. And that's all that matters." I extended my hand. "But your Papa is very worried. Can you come out and talk to him? Is he mad? He's scared. There's a difference." Luca crawled out from under the table and threw himself into my arms. I held him tightly, feeling him tremble. I heard what he said yesterday. About hitting back. About hurting the O'Sullivans. And I remembered Mama. And the blood. And his voice broke. "I don't want anyone else to die because of Papa's business. I know, sweetheart. I know." Anthony appeared in the aisle, and the expression on his face was raw devastation. He dropped to his knees, opening his arms, and Luca ran to him. "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm sorry, I just got so scared and I didn't know what else to do. No, I'm sorry. I'm the one who failed you." Anthony held his son like he might disappear. "I should have been more careful. Should have protected you from that conversation. Should have explained things instead of hiding them," I said quietly. "Luca deserves to understand his father's world, at least the parts that affect him. Age-appropriate truth is better than fear-filled imagination." We left the library together, Luca between us, holding both our hands. Back at the house, Anthony dismissed his security team except for 2 posted outside. Then the 3 of us sat in the living room, and Anthony did something I suspected he'd never done before. He told his son the truth. "My business isn't always legal," Anthony said carefully. "I make money through methods that sometimes break laws. And yes, that means I'm connected to dangerous people and dangerous situations. Your mother died because someone wanted to hurt me, and she was in the wrong place. That's my burden to carry, Luca. My guilt and my responsibility." "Then why don't you stop?" Luca asked, tears streaming down his face. "Why keep doing it if it's dangerous?" "Because it's not that simple. The people who work for me, the families who depend on my organization for their livelihoods, they need stability and protection. If I walk away, someone worse takes over. Someone who doesn't have rules, who doesn't care about innocent people." Anthony's voice was heavy. "I'm not a good man, son. But I try to be a man with honor. I try to minimize harm and protect the people in my care, including me and Kayla. Especially you and Kayla. Everything I do to keep you safe. Even when it means planning to hurt other people?" Anthony flinched at the direct question. "Sometimes, yes. When someone threatens my family, I respond. But I have rules, Luca. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't target families. I keep my conflicts within my world, away from civilians. It wasn't enough to erase the fear or make everything okay. But it was honest, which mattered more than comfort." After Luca went to bed that night, Anthony found me in the garden. He could have been killed today. Running away alone, anything could have happened. But it didn't. He's safe, because of you. You understood him better than I did. Knew where he'd go, how he'd think. Anthony sat beside me. "But this can't continue. Having you and Luca close to me, it puts you both at risk. The O'Sullivans are escalating, and if they figure out how much you mean to me..." "Stop." I turned to face him. "If you're about to suggest I leave for my own safety, don't. I'm not walking away from Luca when he needs stability. And I'm not walking away from you because things got complicated. Kayla, you don't understand what these people are capable of. Then increase security. Take precautions. But don't push me away thinking that's protection, because abandoning Luca now would cause more damage than any external threat." I took his hands. "I'm proposing the opposite. Let me move in here temporarily. That way I'm not commuting, not exposed during travel. I'm here with Luca, providing the constant presence he needs. You want to move into my home in the middle of a territorial war. I want to be where I can help the people I care about." I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not naive, Anthony. I know this is dangerous, but I'd rather face danger with you than safety without you." He studied me for a long moment. "You're sure about this? Once you're here, once you're seen as part of my household, there's no going back to anonymous safety." I stopped being anonymous the night I helped Luca. Everything since then has been borrowed time. I squeezed his hands. I'm sure. Then we do this right. Enhanced security, reinforced protocols, and you follow every safety instruction without question. Agreed. 3 days later, I moved into the Ferraro house with a suitcase of clothes and the understanding that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. I was no longer Kayla Grant, independent woman carefully keeping distance from dangerous entanglements. I was Kayla Grant, the woman living under Anthony Ferraro's roof during a gang war. Protected, yes, but also marked, claimed, irrevocably part of a world I'd once sworn to avoid. And despite every logical reason to be terrified, I'd never felt more certain about where I belonged. Living in Anthony Ferraro's house transformed everything in ways I hadn't anticipated. The professional boundaries that had kept us safe blurred under the weight of domestic intimacy. Small moments accumulated into something larger, more significant, impossible to ignore. Mornings became my favorite time. I'd wake to find Luca already in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast with varying degrees of success. Anthony would join us still half asleep, hair mussed, tie not yet straightened, looking more human than the polished crime boss the world saw. We'd eat together, the three of us crowded around the island instead of the formal dining table, talking about nothing and everything. One Tuesday morning, I couldn't reach the coffee mugs on the top shelf. Before I could grab a step stool, Anthony appeared behind me, his body close as he retrieved the cup. His hand lingered at my waist, thumb tracing small circles through the thin fabric of my shirt. The contact lasted seconds too long to be casual, charged with awareness we both felt, but hadn't fully acknowledged. "Thank you," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. Anytime. His breath was warm against my ear, and when he stepped back, the space between us felt deliberately maintained. Luca remained oblivious to the tension, chattering about a field trip to the planetarium. But I saw Anthony's eyes track me as I moved through the kitchen. Heat and want, and something deeper, more complicated. Evening brought different intimacy. The three of us would pile onto the oversized couch in the den, Luca wedged between us, watching movies until his eyes drooped. One night, he fell asleep during an animated film about ocean creatures, his head on my shoulder, feet stretched across Anthony's lap. We sat there long after the credits rolled, neither of us willing to break the moment. "He's comfortable with you," Anthony said quietly. "More than I've seen him with anyone except family. He's a special kid. You're good for him. For both of us." His hand found mine in the space between us, fingers interlacing. "I don't want to think about what our life would look like without you in it." The admission hung in the darkened room, heavy with implications neither of us was quite ready to explore fully. Brittany visited on a Saturday afternoon, her first time seeing me in the Ferraro house. I gave her a tour, watching her take in the elegant furnishings, the art on the walls, the security cameras discreetly placed in every corner. We ended up in the garden, far from listening ears. "You look happy," she said, but worry shadowed her expression. "Happier than I've seen you since before your mom got sick." "I am happy. Is that wrong?" "It's complicated." She sat on the stone bench, pulling me down beside her. "Kayla, from the outside looking in, you three look like a real family. The way Anthony looks at you, how Luca gravitates toward you, the ease you all have together. It's beautiful and terrifying in equal measure." Why terrifying? Because this isn't sustainable. Eventually, Anthony's world is going to intrude in ways you can't ignore or compartmentalize. And when that happens, you'll have to make a choice about whether you can live with the full reality of who he is. She gripped my hand. "I just need to know you're prepared for that. That you're not getting swept up in the fantasy of playing house with a dangerous man. I'm not naive, Britt. I know what he is." "Do you? Really? Or do you just know the version of him that exists in this house with his son?" I wanted to argue, to insist I understood completely. But the truth was, I'd been carefully avoiding thinking too deeply about Anthony's other life. The business he conducted behind closed doors, the violence implied in vague references to handling situations, the men who came and went with weapons poorly concealed under expensive suits. "I'm choosing to trust him," I said finally, "to believe he can keep that world separate from this one. And if he can't, then I'll deal with it when it happens." Brittany looked like she wanted to say more, But Luca appeared at the garden door, calling me to see something he'd found in his insect habitat. The conversation ended, but her warnings echoed in my mind long after she left. The security room revelation happened by accident 3 days later. I was looking for Anthony to ask about dinner plans, opening doors in the wing of the house I rarely visited. Most rooms were guest quarters or storage, but one door at the end of the hall opened to reveal something entirely different. Banks of monitors covered one wall, displaying feeds from dozens of cameras. Maps of New York spread across a large table, marked with colored pins and annotations I couldn't fully decipher. File cabinets lined another wall, and on the far side of the room, a locked cabinet that I strongly suspected contained weapons. This wasn't a home office. This was a command center. You weren't supposed to see this. Anthony's voice came from behind me, and I spun to find him in the doorway, expression unreadable. What is all this? Exactly what it looks like. The infrastructure that keeps my organization running. He moved into the room, not trying to hide anything now that I'd found it. These monitors show our warehouse locations, import docks, meeting sites. The maps track territory, both ours and rival families. The files contain intelligence on everyone from corrupt politicians to rival organization members. I stared at the evidence of his empire, unable to process the scale. You run all of this from your house, where your son lives? It's secure, protected. And yes, I keep my work close because trusting others with certain information gets people killed. He gestured to the weapons cabinet. That contains backup armaments in case we're ever under direct attack here, which, until recently with the O'Sullivan situation, was an unlikely scenario. Anthony, this is... I struggled for words. This is so much bigger than I imagined. The reach, the organization, the level of... criminality? He supplied. I told you what I was, Kayla. I never pretended to be something else. You told me in abstract terms. This is concrete reality. I pointed at the monitors. How many of these operations are illegal? How many people work for you doing things that could put them in prison? Most of them. And approximately 200 people rely on my organization for their income. The number staggered me. 200 families connected to Anthony's criminal enterprise. 200 people whose livelihoods depended on imported goods that probably bypassed customs, on protection rackets, on all the shadowy business I deliberately avoided learning about. Show me everything, I said suddenly. No more carefully edited versions. No more protecting me from the uncomfortable truths. If I'm living here, if I'm part of your life, I need to know exactly what that means. Anthony studied me for a long moment. Are you sure? Because once you know, you can't unknow it. I'm sure. What followed was the most uncomfortable hour of my life. Anthony walked me through his operations with clinical detail. Import businesses that moved legitimate goods alongside contraband. Relationships with union leaders and port authorities that involved regular payoffs. Protection services offered to businesses in Ferraro territory, which amounted to sophisticated extortion. Enforcement actions against people who violated agreements or threatened his interests, described in language that couldn't hide the violence underneath. By the time he finished, I felt sick. Not because any individual revelation was shocking. I'd known abstractly what crime families did, but because the scope and Anthony's matter-of-fact delivery made it real in a way research and imagination never had. You've ordered people hurt, I said flatly. People killed. Yes. How many? I don't keep count, Kayla. But yes, I've given orders that resulted in deaths. Rivals who threatened my family. Traitors within my organization. People who hurt innocents under my protection. His voice remained steady. I'm not asking you to approve or forgive. I'm just being honest about who I am. And the politicians? The police? You have people on payroll who are supposed to serve the public? I have relationships with officials who understand that certain arrangements benefit everyone. They look the other way on minor infractions. I ensure crime doesn't escalate in ways that make their jobs difficult. He leaned against the table. It's a system that's existed long before me and will exist long after. I didn't create it. I just learned to operate within it. I left the security room and went straight to my temporary bedroom, closing the door and pulling out my phone. Brittany answered on the first ring. I need to talk through something, I said without preamble. And I need you to be completely honest about what you think. For 2 days, I processed. I called Brittany multiple times, working through my feelings with someone who had no stake in the outcome. I avoided Anthony except when Luca needed us both present. Unable to look at him without seeing the maps and monitors and imagining the violence they represented. Luca noticed the tension. "Are you and Papa fighting?" he asked during one afternoon session. "We're working through some complicated adult things," I told him honestly. "But it's not about you, and we're going to figure it out. You're not leaving, are you?" The fear in his voice broke something in me. This child had already lost his mother. He couldn't lose another person he'd come to depend on. "I'm not leaving," I promised. "I just need some time to think about what staying means." On the third night, I found Anthony in his study. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as poorly as I had. "I've made a decision," I said, sitting across from him. He straightened, bracing himself. "I'm listening. I'm staying. Not because I approve of what you do, and not because I'm comfortable with the reality of your business, but because walking away would hurt Luca, and because—" I took a breath. "Because despite everything, I care about you, maybe even love you, though that terrifies me." Relief flooded his features. "Kayla, but I have conditions. Non-negotiable lines that if you cross, I'm gone regardless of how I feel." I held his gaze. "Violence against innocent people is unacceptable. If you target civilians, hurt families, cause collateral damage to people outside your world, I can't be part of your life. And if you ever put Luca at risk through your business decisions, we're done. Those are terms I can live with," Anthony said quietly. "Those are principles I already follow, actually. My business operates within our world, against people who chose this life. I don't target innocents." "Then we have an understanding." He came around the desk, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. "I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you have me anyway." I wrapped my arms around him, feeling the tension drain from his body. "Just don't make me regret this." "I won't, I swear." We stood there holding each other, and I felt something settle inside me. Not peace exactly. This would never be simple or easy, but acceptance. I was choosing this life, this man, with full awareness of what it meant. Weeks ago, I'd already chosen to step into his orbit for Luca's sake. Standing in that dim office, I chose Anthony himself, and everything that came with him, with my eyes wide open. The kiss that followed was different from our first tentative exploration in the garden. This was claiming, acknowledging, accepting. His hands cupped my face like I was precious, and when we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine. "I love you," he whispered. "I know I shouldn't. Know it makes you a target, but I love you. I love you too. God help us both." The explosion that shattered the windows came 3 hours later. One moment I was in my room preparing for bed. The next I was thrown to the floor by the concussive force of something detonating outside. Alarms screamed through the house, and I heard shouting, gunfire, chaos. Anthony burst through my door, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Get to Luca's room. Now." We ran together, finding Luca already awake and terrified, standing in his pajamas staring at the door. Anthony scooped him up and pushed us toward the closet. "There's a door in the back," he said, pulling aside hanging clothes to reveal a reinforced panel. He pressed his thumb to a scanner, and it slid open, revealing a small room beyond. "Panic room. Get inside. What about you?" "I need to coordinate defense. You'll be safe here." He kissed me hard and fast. "Don't open this door for anyone except me. It's biometric, locked to my prints and voice only." More gunfire erupted downstairs. Closer now. Anthony shoved us inside, and the door sealed behind us with a definitive click. The panic room was small but well-equipped. Reinforced walls, its own air supply, monitors showing feeds from throughout the house. Food, water, medical supplies, and yes, weapons in a locked case. Luca clung to me, shaking. The O'Sullivans? Probably. I held him close, watching the monitors. On the screens, I saw Anthony's men engaging with armed intruders. The fight brutal and efficient. Bodies fell on both sides. "This is my fault," Luca whispered. "I ran away, And now they know we're vulnerable and, no, this is not your fault. This is what happens in your father's world sometimes. I turned his face toward mine. But we're safe. Your dad made sure of that. Hours passed. The fighting gradually died down, but we stayed locked in our secure room because those were Anthony's orders. Luca eventually dozed fitfully against my shoulder, exhausted by fear. I watched the monitors, tracking Anthony moving through the damaged house, checking on his men, coordinating cleanup. When he finally appeared at the panic room door, speaking the code phrase to unlock it, relief nearly brought me to my knees. "It's over," he said, pulling us both into his arms. "The O'Sullivans sent a strike team. We repelled them, captured 3 alive for questioning. And your men? 2 injured, none dead. We were lucky." He looked around the panic room, then at us. "I'm sorry you had to see this. Experience this. We're alive. That's what matters." But my hands shook as I held Luca, and I knew this night would haunt us for a long time. Anthony carried Luca back to his room, and I followed, none of us wanting to be separated. We ended up in Luca's bed, the child between us, all 3 holding onto each other like lifelines. "This has to end," Anthony said quietly over Luca's sleeping form. "The O'Sullivans crossed a line attacking my home, threatening my family. I'm going to end this conflict permanently." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm done being reactive. I'm taking the fight to them, and when it's over, they'll either be eliminated or subdued to the point where they'll never threaten us again." I knew I should object, should argue for peaceful resolution, but lying in that bed with the child I loved, the man I loved, in a house that still smelled of smoke and gunpowder, I couldn't find it in myself to ask for mercy for people who'd tried to kill us. "Do what you need to do," I said instead. "Just come home safe. I will. I promise." The sun rose on a damaged house and changed lives, but we were alive, together. And that was all that mattered. The house smelled like smoke and plaster dust for days after the attack. Workers arrived to repair windows and walls, moving through rooms with efficient silence while armed guards watched from every corner. The normalcy we'd carefully constructed had been obliterated in one violent night, and I understood with crystal clarity that it could happen again. Anthony's response surprised me. Instead of sending us away to some safe house like I'd expected, he doubled down on keeping us close. "I learned my lesson when Luca ran away," he said the morning after the attack. Both of us exhausted and operating on coffee and adrenaline. Separating this family causes more damage than keeping us together with proper protection. Proper protection meant security personnel tripled overnight. Men stationed at every entrance, patrol routes through the property, even discreet guards positioned on neighboring rooftops. It felt like living in a fortress, which I supposed we were. But underneath the visible security, Anthony was planning something. I saw it in the tension that never left his shoulders, the late-night meetings with his closest advisors, the maps and documents that covered his desk. He was done being reactive, done waiting for the O'Sullivans to make the next move. 4 days of careful preparation followed. Anthony tried to maintain distance from the details around Luca and me, but we weren't blind. We saw the coordination, felt the building energy of something significant approaching. Luca handled it better than I'd expected. We maintained our routine as much as possible, reading together, working on school projects, tending to his insect habitats. But the fear lingered in his eyes, especially at night when shadows felt heavier. On the 3rd evening, as I was tucking him into bed, he grabbed my hand tightly. "When this is over, when Papa fixes things with the O'Sullivans, you're not going to leave, are you?" My heart cracked at the vulnerability in his question. "I'm not going anywhere, Luca, I promise. But what if it gets dangerous again? What if more bad people come?" I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing honesty over hollow reassurance. "Your father is doing everything possible to end this conflict permanently. But yes, his world will always carry some danger. That's the reality of who he is and what he does." I brushed hair from his forehead. "But I'm choosing to stay anyway, because you and your father have become my family, and you don't abandon family when things get hard." He threw his arms around my neck, holding on like I might disappear if he let go. "I love you, Kayla. It was the first time he'd said it directly, and the words undid me completely. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. Brittany visited the next evening, insisting on coming despite the obvious security concerns. She brought wine and homemade lasagna, determinedly acting like this was a normal dinner with friends, rather than a meal in a fortified compound during a gang war. We ate in the dining room, the four of us. Anthony, Luca, Brittany, and me. Conversation flowed surprisingly easily. Brittany asked Luca about his insect collection, listened with genuine interest as he explained the molting process of beetles. She discussed literature with Anthony, discovering they'd both read the same obscure Italian novel. I watched her observe us throughout the meal, cataloging the small intimacies that defined our dynamic. How Anthony automatically cut Luca's food into manageable pieces. How Luca leaned against me when he got tired. How Anthony's hand found mine under the table, fingers interlacing without conscious thought. After Luca went to bed, Brittany pulled me aside in the kitchen while Anthony took a phone call. "You're really doing this," she said quietly. "Committing to this life, this family." "I am." She studied my face, searching for doubt or hesitation. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she pulled me into a tight hug. "Then I support you. I'm still terrified for you. But I see how happy you are, how happy he makes you, how much that kid needs you." "Thank you," I whispered against her shoulder. "I know this isn't what you wanted for me. What I want is for you to be loved and safe. And somehow, impossibly, that crime boss in there provides both." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Just promise me you'll be careful. And if you need me, for anything, I'm here. I know. I love you." "Love you too, you crazy woman." Anthony left for the confrontation on a Thursday morning. He'd explained the plan the night before, a meeting in neutral territory, mediated by the Rinaldi family who maintained friendly relations with multiple organizations. A chance to negotiate resolution without further bloodshed. "The O'Sullivans are bleeding resources from our conflict," Anthony had said. "They've lost men, money, and credibility. I'm offering them an arrangement that saves face while establishing clear boundaries. Division of the dock territories with shared access to certain facilities. They maintain their operations, we maintain ours, everyone benefits from peace. And if they refuse, then things escalate in ways neither of us want. But they won't refuse. I'm making the offer attractive enough that rejection would seem weak to their own people." His confidence was absolute. "This ends today, one way or another." Before he left that morning, he found me in the garden. He wore a dark suit, his usual armor of power and control. But when he looked at me, something vulnerable showed through. "If something goes wrong," he started. "Nothing's going wrong," I interrupted firmly. "You're coming home. We're going to have dinner tonight, all three of us, and celebrate the end of this nightmare. Kayla, no. I'm not accepting any other possibility." I grabbed his jacket lapels, pulling him down to eye level. "You come home to us, Anthony Ferraro. That's an order." He smiled despite the tension. "Yes, ma'am." The kiss we shared tasted like coffee and determination. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. "I love you," he said. "Whatever happens, know that. I love you too. Now go end this." The waiting was torture. Luca and I tried to distract ourselves with normal activities, but we both kept glancing at the clock, tracking hours. Marco provided updates every 30 minutes. They'd arrived at the neutral site. The meeting had begun. Negotiations were proceeding. 3 hours after Anthony left, Marco's message finally came. "It's done. They accepted terms. Boss is coming home." Relief nearly dropped me to my knees. Luca, reading my expression, flew into my arms. "He's okay? Papa's okay?" "He's fine. He's coming home." Anthony arrived 90 minutes later, and my relief transformed into alarm when I saw blood seeping through his white shirt, staining the shoulder of his suit jacket. "It's nothing," he said immediately when he saw my face. "Barely a graze. One of the O'Sullivan's men got aggressive during final negotiations. My people handled it. Sit down." My voice came out sharper than intended, old nursing training snapping into place. "Luca, get the first aid kit from the bathroom. The big one." I helped Anthony out of his jacket and shirt, revealing the wound on his shoulder. He was right that it wasn't critical. The bullet had carved a groove across the muscle without penetrating deeply, but it was bleeding steadily and needed treatment. My hands shook as I cleaned and dressed the wound, adrenaline and fear making fine motor control difficult. Anthony sat still, watching my face rather than what I was doing. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For getting shot or for scaring me?" "Both. All of it. Everything I've put you through since that night in the alley." I pressed gauze firmly against the wound, perhaps harder than strictly necessary. "You're an idiot for putting yourself in danger. A complete idiot for thinking a business meeting required you personally when you have dozens of people who could have handled negotiations. Kayla, but you're alive, and it's over, and that's what matters." Tears I hadn't allowed myself to shed started falling. "Don't ever do that to me again. Don't make me sit here wondering if you're coming home." He pulled me against his chest with his good arm, and I felt his heart beating strong and steady beneath my ear. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." We stayed like that until Luca appeared with the first aid kit. Together, we finished bandaging Anthony's shoulder, our hands working in tandem, the domesticity of the moment, patching up injuries in the quiet house, felt surreal after hours of terror. That night, after Luca was asleep, Anthony found me on the balcony off my room. The city spread before us, millions of lights hiding millions of stories. Somewhere out there, the O'Sullivan family was licking their wounds and accepting their new reality. Here, in this house, we were doing the same. "It's really over?" I asked. "The territorial agreement is signed. They maintain their docks in Brooklyn. We keep Manhattan and Queens. Shared access to 3 neutral facilities. Everyone profits from peace more than continued war." He moved to stand beside me. "They're not happy, but they're pragmatic. And I made it clear that future aggression means total war they can't win. So we're safe now? Safer. There are no guarantees in my world, but the immediate threat is resolved." He turned to face me. "Which means I need to ask you something I've been avoiding." My heart rate accelerated. "What?" "I want a real future with you, Kayla. Not this temporary arrangement where you're living here because of circumstances. Not a relationship we're testing while pretending we might walk away." He took my hands in his. "I want you as my partner, my wife, the mother of my children. I want to build a life together that Luca can see as an example of what love should look like." I'd known this conversation was coming, but hearing the words still stole my breath. "Anthony, before you answer, you need to understand what I'm asking. I'm not offering you a fairy tale. I'm offering you my complicated, dangerous, morally compromised life. I'm asking you to stand beside a man who will never be fully legitimate, who will always operate in shadows, who carries blood on his hands." His grip tightened on mine. "But I'm also promising to love you completely, to protect you fiercely, to build something real in the middle of all that darkness." I let his words settle, processing what marriage to Anthony Ferraro would actually mean. Not the fantasy version where love conquers all complications, but the reality of choosing this life with open eyes. "I need you to understand something too," I said carefully. "I'm not going to be a silent wife who accepts everything without question. I'm going to challenge you when I think you're wrong. I'm going to demand input on decisions that affect Luca. I'm going to maintain my own identity and values even when they conflict with yours. I don't want a silent wife. I want a partner who calls me on my bullshit. I'm serious, Anthony. There will be times when we fundamentally disagree about your business decisions. Times when I'm furious with you for risks you take or choices you make. I won't just smile and support you blindly. Good. I need someone strong enough to stand up to me. Someone who reminds me there's more to life than power and control." He pulled me closer. "You make me want to be better, Kayla. Not perfect. I'll never be that. But better than I was. You make me want to build something that Luca can inherit without shame. Something legitimate that exists alongside the other businesses. You'd do that? Actually legitimize parts of your empire? I'd do anything for you. For Luca. For the family we're building." He cupped my face gently. "Marry me. Not because it's practical or safe, but because we love each other and want to face whatever comes next together." The yes was on my lips, ready to emerge, but I forced myself to pause. This was too important to decide impulsively. Give me time to think, I said. Not because I don't love you, but because I need to be absolutely certain I can live with all the implications. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. But as I looked into his eyes, saw the hope and vulnerability there, I realized I'd already made my decision. I'd made it weeks ago when I moved into this house. Made it the night I stayed beside him in the panic room. Made it every time I chose to remain despite having every reason to leave. Actually, I said, smiling despite the tears streaming down my face, I don't need time. Yes, Anthony. I'll marry you. His kiss tasted like relief and promise and new beginnings. When we finally broke apart, he was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this. You better, I said, laughing through my tears. Because if I'm committing to being a mob boss's wife, you're committing to being the best husband in the world. No half measures. No half measures, he agreed. We stood on that balcony until dawn painted the sky pink and gold, talking about futures and possibilities, building plans for a life that would be messy and complicated and absolutely ours. In the quiet days that followed, I went back to Rossetti's one last time in something that wasn't my uniform. Marco pretended not to get misty when I told him I was giving up my shifts, but he hugged me harder than any boss usually hugs an employee. Brittany grumbled about losing her favorite gossip partner, then made me promise that if Anthony ever stopped deserving me, she'd personally drag me back behind the bar. Walking out into the alley without my apron, I realized I was closing the door on the life I'd built out of sheer survival and stepping fully into the messy, terrifying possibility of something more. 3 months of peace felt like a luxury I'd almost forgotten existed. The house repairs were completed. Security remained tight, but less oppressive, and Anthony's tension gradually eased as the O'Sullivan Accord held. We settled into a rhythm that felt remarkably like the normal life I'd once thought impossible in his world. Anthony had proposed marriage that night on the balcony, and I'd accepted with full awareness of what that meant. But I'd also insisted on a long engagement, needing time to ensure this decision was right for all of us, not just a response to surviving danger together. I'm not going anywhere, I'd told him when he looked worried about the delay. But marriage is permanent, and I need to be absolutely certain we can build something sustainable, not just survive crisis together. He'd agreed without argument, which only confirmed I was making the right choice. The foundation became my passion project during those months. Using the salary I'd been saving, $10,000 monthly had allowed me to clear my mother's medical debts within weeks and start accumulating real savings. I established the Sarah Grant Foundation for Cancer Patient Support. Small initially, just providing financial assistance to families struggling with treatment costs, but growing steadily. Anthony supported the venture enthusiastically, offering business connections and legal expertise without trying to control it. Watching him help me build something separate from his criminal enterprises, something purely good, showed me the man he was capable of being. You're legitimizing parts of the business, I observed one evening, reviewing documents he'd asked me to look over. Import companies, real estate holdings, investment portfolios. Actually moving money into legal channels. 40% so far, he confirmed. It's a start. Eventually, I want Luca to inherit an empire he can be proud of, not one that requires hiding in shadows. He looked at me seriously. That's your influence. You make me want to build something better. Luca flourished in ways that still amazed me. He'd started at a new school with smaller classes and more individual attention, making friends easily now that his confidence had returned. He'd stopped having nightmares entirely, sleeping peacefully through every night. And somewhere along the way, he'd started calling me Mom, not constantly, and never forced. Just occasionally, naturally, when asking me to help with homework or say goodnight. The first time it happened, my heart had stopped completely. Mom, can you check my science project? He'd asked casually, not even realizing what he'd said. Anthony had heard it too, his eyes meeting mine across the room with wonder and gratitude and love so intense it hurt. Of course, sweetheart, I'd managed, voice thick with emotion. Now, it was simply part of our vocabulary. He had 2 mothers, one who lived in his memory and heart, one who lived in his present and future. Both loved completely, neither replacing the other. The revelation about the Bullies came unexpectedly, during a conversation with one of Anthony's lawyers about foundation paperwork. The man mentioned in passing that the Grant Foundation shared its name with a woman involved in a recent juvenile justice case. 3 teenagers from St. Augustine Prep, he explained. Assault and harassment charges, cyberbullying, targeting a minor. The families tried to make it go away quietly, but someone pushed for proper prosecution. Judge gave them community service, mandatory counseling, and permanent marks on their records that'll affect college admissions. My blood went cold. 3 boys from St. Augustine. You know the case? I know their victim. I looked at the lawyer carefully. Did Anthony have anything to do with that prosecution? The man hesitated, clearly uncertain how much to reveal. Finally, he ensured the evidence reached the right people and that pressure was applied through legitimate legal channels. No violence, no threats, just making sure the system actually worked for once. After the lawyer left, I found Anthony in his study. The boys who hurt Luca that night. You made sure they faced consequences. He set down the document he'd been reading. I told you I would. Through the legal system. Not through your people, not through violence. You actually let the law handle it. You asked me to be better. I'm trying. He stood, coming around the desk. Those kids needed to learn that actions have repercussions. But killing or maiming teenagers would make me the monster you fear I am. So I found another way. I threw my arms around him. Emotion overwhelming rational thought. Thank you. For choosing the harder path. For trying to be the man I see in you. You make me want to be that man. He said simply. Luca's 9th birthday fell on a Saturday in late spring. We celebrated with a small party. Just his closest friends from school. Brittany, who'd become a regular fixture in our lives, and a few of Anthony's family members. The house filled with laughter and chaos. So different from the silent fortress it had been months ago. After the other children left, and we'd cleaned up the aftermath of cake and games, the 3 of us sat down to a quiet dinner. Luca had been unusually thoughtful all evening, and halfway through the meal, he set down his fork with determination. I want to ask for something for my birthday, he announced. You already got your presents, Anthony said, amused. 3 new Beatles for your collection. Books. That telescope you wanted. Not a thing. A request. Luca looked between us, suddenly nervous. I want Kayla to officially be part of our family. Like, legally. I want her to be my mom for real, not just because we say so. To Luca, official meant last names on forms and adults who didn't disappear when paperwork changed. He wanted proof the world could see that I was staying. My throat tightened. Luca, I know you and Papa are engaged, and you'll get married eventually. But I want it to be now. I want us to be a real family now, not someday. His eyes, so much like his father's, held surprising maturity. Please? Anthony produced a small velvet box from his jacket pocket, and I realized this had been planned. I was going to wait until after dinner, he said, opening it to reveal a stunning diamond ring. But our son makes a compelling argument. You 2 conspired, I managed, laughing through sudden tears. We discussed, Anthony corrected. Luca feels strongly that 9 years old is too long to wait for the mother he wants to officially claim. He slid out of his chair, kneeling beside me. Kayla Grant, will you marry me? Not someday, not eventually, but soon. Will you become Mrs. Ferraro and make this family official in every way that matters? I looked at Luca's hopeful face, at Anthony's vulnerable expression, at the life we'd built from impossible circumstances. I have one condition. Name it. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. Nothing ostentatious or attention-grabbing. I want it to be about us, about this family. Not about showing off wealth or power. Done. Whatever you want. Then yes. Absolutely yes. Anthony slipped the ring onto my finger while Luca cheered, and we held each other tightly. 3 people who'd found family in the wreckage of loss and fear. Planning happened quickly. 6 weeks felt simultaneously rushed and perfect. Brittany became my maid of honor, throwing herself into preparations with enthusiasm tempered by her usual protective concern. You're really doing this, she said, during a dress fitting 2 weeks before the wedding. Marrying Anthony Ferraro, becoming part of his world permanently. I am. Are you okay with that? She adjusted the train of my simple cream-colored dress, considering, "I'm terrified for you. But I'm also happy, because I've watched you bloom over these months. You're not just surviving anymore, Kayla. You're actually living." She met my eyes in the mirror. "That's worth the risk, I think. Thank you for supporting this even when you're scared. Always. That's what family does." The wedding took place in the garden on a perfect June afternoon. Anthony had wanted to invite his entire organization, but I'd held firm. Only the people who truly mattered. Luca as ring-bearer, Brittany as my only attendant, Anthony's most trusted men and their families, a handful of relatives who'd welcomed me without judgment, 50 people instead of 500, intimate instead of ostentatious, real. I wore the cream dress we'd found together, simple and elegant without being extravagant. Anthony looked devastating in a dark suit, his eyes never leaving me as I walked toward him through the garden we'd shared so many important conversations in. Luca stood beside his father, holding our rings with solemn importance, beaming so brightly he could have lit the entire city. The ceremony was brief, personal vows replacing traditional liturgy. When my turn came, I spoke from the heart. "Anthony, I promise to always challenge you when I think you're wrong, to be a partner rather than a follower. I promise to protect Luca above everything else, to help him grow into the kind of man who makes the world better. I promise to maintain my own identity and values, even when they conflict with yours." I squeezed his hands. "But most importantly, I promise to love you completely, to see the good man underneath the complicated life, to build something beautiful in the middle of your darkness." Anthony's voice was rough with emotion when he responded. "Kayla, I promise to honor your strength, to never try to limit or control you. I promise to always consider your voice in decisions that affect our family. I promise to keep becoming better, to build a legacy Luca can inherit with pride." His thumbs brushed across my knuckles. "And I promise to love you with everything I am, to protect what we've built, to never take for granted the miracle of you choosing me despite every reason you shouldn't have." When we kissed as husband and wife, Luca's cheer was loudest of all. The reception was simple: dinner under string lights, dancing on grass, speeches that made everyone laugh and cry. Brittany toasted our happiness while warning Anthony that she'd hunt him down if he ever hurt me. Several of Anthony's men looked appropriately terrified by her fierce protectiveness, which made me love her even more. As the evening wound down and guests departed, the three of us stood in the garden watching fireflies emerge in the twilight. Luca between us, holding both our hands, looking more content than I'd ever seen him. "We're really a family now," he said. "Official in everything. We were always a family," Anthony corrected gently. "But yes, now everyone knows it." 1 year later, I stood in the foundation office reviewing expansion plans. The Sarah Grant Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined, now helping 50 families monthly with medical costs, providing counseling services, offering support groups for children who'd lost parents to cancer. The work filled me with purpose that had nothing to do with Anthony's world, and everything to do with honoring my mother's memory. I still remembered the plastic hospital chairs, and the way fluorescent lights buzzed over my mother's bed. Every grant application we approved felt like a small act of rebellion against that helplessness. Luca thrived at his school, excelling academically while maintaining close friendships. He'd started an environmental club focused on insect conservation, giving presentations with confidence that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. He was happy, healthy, whole. Anthony had legitimized 40% of his business operations, a number that grew steadily as he found ways to move resources into legal channels. He'd never be completely legitimate. Some aspects of his empire couldn't transition without collapsing the entire structure, but he was trying, building something Luca could inherit without shame. Our life wasn't perfect. Anthony still made decisions I disagreed with, still operated in moral gray areas that made me uncomfortable. We fought sometimes, passionately and loudly, about boundaries and choices and values. But we fought honestly, without hiding truths or pretending our differences didn't exist. And we loved fiercely. The kind of love built on full knowledge of each other's flaws and complications, chosen daily despite easier alternatives. That evening, I came home to find Anthony and Luca in the garden, releasing one of Luca's beetles back into the wild after weeks of observation. They were laughing together, heads bent close over the habitat, so similar in profile it made my heart ache. This was my family. Imperfect, complicated, built from tragedy and choice and impossible circumstances. But ours, chosen and real and worth every risk I'd taken to get here. Anthony looked up as I approached, and the love in his eyes remained as intense as that first kiss in this same garden. Welcome home. Home. Not the house or the city, but these two people who'd become my entire world. I'm exactly where I belong, I said, joining them and wrapping my arms around both. And I was. Against every odd, despite every complication, I'd found my place in Anthony Ferraro's dangerous, beautiful, impossible world. Found family in the last place I'd expected to look. It had started with a rainy night, a crying child, and one impulsive act of kindness. It had grown into everything that mattered, and I wouldn't change a single moment of the journey that brought us here. The end.